Hello again, everyone. Welcome back to another great Trotec Laser live stream on Fridays. So happy to have everyone joining us today. Anyone who's in the chat joining us today, please feel sure to say hello. Let us know where you're watching from. Introduce yourself. We're always excited to have you guys along with us for these live streams. This week we're coming back to our Materials Masterclass with my two very well-spoken and versatile co-hosts. Kelly, how are you? Oh, no. Kelly, can you hear me?
I can, yeah.
How are you?
Good, thank you. Sorry.
Good. No, it's all good.
I'm having technical difficulties. If you see me step away, I'm resetting my router.
Okay. I mean, that sounds like it might, interrupt you being in the stream a little bit. But I like a challenge. I like when we get exciting surprises. Those are always fun. Just so you guys know that we do these live, and so anything that happens is purely for character and for color. It's to be entertaining and a lot of fun. Speaking of entertaining and a lot of fun, Alan, how are you, sir?
I am doing just great. Best day ever, as James would say.
Best day ever. If you guys have never seen a stream with James, I encourage you to go back into our archives on our YouTube channel and check out some of the James streams, because he has done some very cool stuff with us. And I will say, speaking with him not too long ago, he was getting pretty excited about these consumables webinars. I think he sort of echoed what a lot of people have been telling me, which is, we are very fortunate to have Kelly and Alan with us. If you have ever had a consumables question, this is the stream. Anything and everything consumables is on the table. If you guys have something you'd like to know, throw it out there and we will happily grab it. If I can't grab your question from chat right away, not to worry. I'm absolutely always watching as it goes, and I will catalog them for whenever we get kind of a free moment to toss them in. But Kelly's been going through basically one material at a time, right, Kelly, for the last couple of months?
Yep. We've been just hitting each category, and we seem to have a lot to talk about in every category, so that's great.
I think we have overestimated our expectation every presentation for what we're planning to get through, and then inevitably. But this is a topic I love to ask questions about. This is a topic I feel like doesn't necessarily get as much love or affection from our live streams as I wish it did. But the consumables is a huge part of, I think, what makes Trotec such an exciting, interesting company to work with. I mean, inevitably, we were all new with lasers at some point, and we all had to figure out, what that perfect mix of power and speed, or what those perfect settings were. And, I would say one of the biggest, if not the biggest benefit of, going through Trotec for your materials is going to be that we can always give you a little bit of a hand. Is that fair to say?
Yep.
Awesome. Thank you. Well, I think, again, because we've run long every single previous material stream, I don't want to wait too long. We've got a good batch of people joining us here. So I will throw it right to you, Kelly. Where are we starting this month?
We are starting on the woods.
Awesome.
Oh, yeah. So start with the solid wood. So first of all, just hello, everybody. Nice to see so many familiar faces there. It's rainy here in Edmonton, too. Doug, hi. And we'll start with the solid wood. So there's about 5 different finishes. They are 1/4 inch thick. They come in 12 by 24 sheets, and just about 12 by 24 because we convert them from millimeters, but so many different applications we can use. Our woods actually took off when COVID took off, and we got all kinds of crafters and home businesses starting, and our woods just started flying out the door. So super exciting product line to have. Little hint, we are getting one new finish later this year. So I'm not gonna spoil the surprise, but there's one new finish coming.
So that'll be that'll be a veneer, that'll be a veneer sheet, like a
it'll
solid
be a
wood
veneer,
with
yeah.
Gotcha. Okay, cool.
Yeah, it'll be a veneer. So basically our woods are formaldehyde free. So when we engrave with them, there aren't as many chemicals. as something you would pick up at, say, Home Depot or somewhere like that. So a lot more user friendly, a lot less dangerous to the environment. Yeah. And does anybody have any questions about the solid woods?
I think Doug is hoping that you'll spill the beans on the new shade of.
Doug will be.
I will say
it's a lighter color.
Sometimes too, if we show stuff, at least this has happened to me, where if we show stuff too early and then they come back to us and say, oh, the final version is actually slightly X than the original, sample version we showed you. I always feel bad if we show you something too early and then it turns out.
Yeah. Remember that material we said we were going to add? Well, it comes from Russia, so.
Yeah, exactly. So at the moment.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's one color that we're adding, so that it's always exciting to get a new color and a new finish, because then everybody has something new to play with, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it would add a third of the lighter colors. That's all I'll say. What else do we want to say about wood? Yeah, I guess if we have no questions about the wood, we'll just go through them.
They'll come up as we go. I mean, you're right in saying too that these are some of our most popular products. I think.
Yeah.
This is one of the areas where, I mean, when I got into lasers, I presumed on a lot of the typical customers being, again, like the general laser customers you think of, right? General engravers, things of this nature. But the number of woodworkers and the number of people who do amazing stuff with wood on lasers consistently surprises me to this day. It's unbelievable, considering that, I mean, to me, it's one of the toughest materials to get, just perfect, right? In terms of having to shield yourself from burning, to, contend with each kind of piece of wood is a little bit different. They don't have the same kind of consistency as acrylics do sometimes, because they're a natural product, right? I mean, even in terms of like warping and stuff like this, it's something you have to combat when you're working with wood principally. So, there are a lot of little tips and tricks you learn over the years of getting to work with it.
Well, for sure, when you're working with natural materials, there's nothing that you can do, and the material can change, and you just gotta kind of learn to deal with those issues that come up, like the warping. And for the residue, masking tape, your best friend, is going to stop the resin from going onto the material. So we're working with wood. Most of the people that I've talked to about it have switched over to just completely masking everything they do with wood. And then some people just like that really natural smoky look. So it just depends on who's working with it. Same with if you speed up your engraving, you get a lighter engraving. If you slow it down, you get a nice dark engraving. So just depends what you're trying to achieve.
You also get darker engraving if you're out of focus. The farther out of focus, the darker it's going to be.
I would say too, don't be intimidated by, as I said, because well, let me see, before I kind of get into, what makes veneer wood in particular kind of interesting, do you want to give us kind of a quick rundown, Kelly, of what separates veneer from like typical like a solid wood sheet, let's say?
Yep. So the solid wood is just solid wood all the way through. The veneer is two really thin sheets of solid wood with an MDF core. So it just gives the solid wood appearance without the same costs.
It is really beautiful. I mean, I think when it comes to the veneer, it might be my favorite of all the wood products, just because I feel like it is very dependably, you don't get as much in the way of sort of variability in my limited experience from one to the next to the next. They are all beautiful, but I really do love using the veneers just because, again, the sheet size is so conducive with our lasers that, like I said, just about 24 by 12. Do we know, is there a reason, could somebody tell me why it is that slight variation, like why it is just ever so slightly smaller than 24 by 12? Is there a...
Because it's in millimeters.
Gotcha.
It converts to a little bit less in inches, same as the acrylic sheets that we have. They're not quite 2x4.
Yeah, they're 600 millimeters by 300 millimeters.
Gotcha.
And 24 by 12 would be 610 by 305.
Okay.
So.
Makes sense. I love this
That
video.
was a good question, though. That was a good question, because a lot of people are like, why that size?
The other thing with the veneer over the solid wood is solid wood will warp. Any change in temperature, humidity, it's going to warp. That's why we don't have the solid wood available in thinner materials, because the thinner you go, the more it's going to warp. That's also why, if you look at the solid woods, it's always done with strips of wood, and they alternate the grain. If you look from the end, you'll see the curl of the grain alternates between each of the strips. And what that does is it's intended to sort of balance out the warp, because it'll warp in the direction of the grain. So if you alternate the grain, you get this instead of this, right? With the MDF, it's much more dimensionally stable, because the MDF, unless it gets soaked with water, it's not going to change. It won't warp. It's not going to change in thickness. Nothing's going to change on the MDF as long as it stays relatively dry.
That's sort of where I was coming from when I was saying that I love working with the veneer, because it just tends to be the most, in my experience, from one piece to the next, even though each strip comes from a different tree, obviously, and has a little bit of, its natural kind of patina and stuff, that sort of, because of, as you said, the MDF core, it really does prevent it from, you don't have to worry quite so much about warping. You don't have to worry quite so much about just the stuff that any natural material is going to be, prone to. I would say, do you have any tips for how people might avoid warping once they've, because I know in Canada, for example, like our wood comes packaged, let's say in plastic wrap, but once you've opened the plastic wrap, all of that humidity, all of that stuff it's going to start infiltrating that product right away.
Yeah, there's a few things you can do. I mean, big Ziploc bags.
Yep.
Moisture, humidity is not your friend with wood. So try to keep it dry. Always store it flat. None of our materials should be stored on their side or on their end, because you're going to put a curl into it. And the other thing that you can do is, if you do see that it's got a bit of a curl to it, just alternate the sheets so that the warp is going in opposite directions, and then put something heavy on it, or wrap it up really good with shrink wrap or something like that. And eventually, over time, it'll flatten out. The elastic capabilities of the wood will kind of work against each other, and it'll kind of come out to an average sort of flatness.
Keep in mind too that, obviously something is going to work best in the laser when it is perfectly flat. But it, even if you have a very slight, bow to your project, it's still perfectly good to work with. You might have to make some calculations. You might have to, work with some duct tape or something else to get it to sit as flat as you possibly can. But, this is nothing that I think our customers and our seasoned engravers haven't dealt with before. And, Trolley's lights or thins as well and stuff like this. I mean, it's always something to keep, in the back of your mind, certainly.
Yeah.
It sounds pretty low tech, but unfortunately, all the ways that you're thinking of to keep something flat, like heavy weight or, duct tape or whatever, they all, they work.
Well, just also in the example here, if your machine has a downdraft table, has the vacuum table, as long as you're covering up the other areas where the wood isn't, or sealing the edges if the edges are lifting a little bit, that downdraft table will hold it flat.
True.
You shouldn't have any problems with that. But you can see in this picture, they've got a piece of just the regular masking down over the rest of the table, so the air is got to go through the wood, basically.
Yeah. Is this a laser paper also, or is this just?
That's the laser paper, yeah. That's the wood veneer laser paper. Just an interesting thing on the downdraft tables. If you have a big CNC table, they actually use MDF for the table, because the air can go through the MDF, and they can cut it up, and it's inexpensive to replace. So we're not the only industry that uses vacuum tables in wood.
That's really cool. Kelly, did you want to take us through maybe the plywood and MDF here really quick?
Yeah, sure. I just wanted to mention, like I mentioned it in all the other streams, is that in our catalog and on our mytrotec.ca in the presentations folder, you'll find all kinds of videos that are helpful for working with the wood and any of our products, really. So if you go to our YouTube channel and subscribe, of course, but if you look for any of our materials, you'll find a bunch of videos that are super instructional and helpful. So just giving you that. So we're doing plywood. So we have our plywood. I believe it comes in a couple of different sizes of sheets, but it's also formaldehyde free. So it's one of the advantages of buying wood that is kind of produced for laser engraving. So less treating of it, and you won't find that just going to look for plywood in any store. There's a reason why we say it's made for laser engraving. Mm-hmm. So, and then the MDF, we carry in the full size sheet. So the almost 2x4 sheet and 12x24 sheets. And so a lot of the MDF, people are using it as a backer for another material, just to make whatever they're making more solid. What else can we say about it?
Well, let me ask you this. To your point, can somebody use wood that they find at their local Home Depot with their laser? Is that something that's possible? Is it something they should avoid? Is it something that's okay?
Oh, no.
I mean,
they sure can.
Yeah. And a lot of times it depends on what you're doing. A lot of times the stuff that you'll find at Home Depot will be sort of specialized. The biggest difference that you're going to find if you're buying plywood is typically plywood manufacturers, they will take the sheets that have the knots and the holes and the splits and everything in them and put them in the middle so you can't see them. And anything that's not wood is going to be filled with glue, and the glue is denser than the wood. And that's why if you go to Home Depot and you buy a piece of plywood and you cut through it, you flip it over and there's like 3 places where it didn't cut at all. And that's why. Our wood, we can't really say we don't have any knots because that's not possible, but it's a much higher standard for what they'll allow, even in those middle sheets that you don't see. So that's the thing. But I mean, if you want Purple Heart or ebony or any exotic woods like that, or your customer wants those, if you can get them from Home Depot or Windsor Plywood is one we have. It's all going to be fine. It's not going to hurt your laser. And it's not going to be any more detrimental to your health than if you burned it in your fireplace. So
true. Anytime you're doing a new product too, I mean, we always recommend the same things, right? In terms of, checking the MSDS sheet or anything like that, wherever you can, wherever possible. And then also, things like a matrix or matrices to kind of test your power ranges and stuff like that. But I mean, to some degree, it's an oversimplification, but is it fair to say kind of wood is wood, right? Like you have similar experiences working with each kind, even though each one does have a little bit of a, its own character, its own.
Yes and no.
That's why
Yes,
I asked.
any kind of wood, literally any kind of wood, you will be able to use on your laser.
Mhm.
But there's a lot of differences. I mean, some woods are literally so dense that you can't excuse me, you can't carve them. I've run into that in the past. You can laser engrave them, but if you need to cut them, you're going to be there all day. The other thing you want to keep in mind when you're choosing wood, and another advantage of the MDF, is some woods, the different colors of the grain are actually significantly different densities. Oak is famous for this. The dark parts are very soft and the light parts are very hard. And so when you engrave them, the deeper you go, the more you see that grain in the bottom of your cut. With the MDF, you can go basically right through that thin veneer. It's only, I think it's 10 thou thick. But you can blow through that veneer into the MDF, and then the bottom of your engraving is going to be perfectly consistent. So that's the other thing to watch with the woods, is that you get something that's going to be consistent enough, even between the grain variations, that you get the consistency and the quality of the engraving that you're looking for.
I'd never heard that before, actually, but that's really interesting. That's really cool.
Yeah.
Particularly too, I guess, if you're a smaller business offering, let's say particular products, if customers are choosing the color or type of wood that they want in advance, you want to try and make that as uniform or as close to what they expect they're ordering as possible. I can appreciate,
That's why walnut plaques are so popular now.
Yeah.
Back in the day, the very first laser engravers, the only materials they had to work on was wood, and so they did a lot of plaques. And it was either oak if you wanted a light finish, or walnut if you wanted a dark finish. And the oak just doesn't engrave as nice, so walnut became very popular, and that's when people started doing cherry and maple and those kind of things, which really weren't used for plaques before then because they're a little bit softer.
Definitely.
The maple too, I find the maple, there's a big difference in the material. Sometimes half of it'll be like really pretty dark, and then half of it could be really, really light. So yeah.
Absolutely. And I mean, I remember somebody explaining this to me. It seems simple in retrospect, but even you were talking earlier about the different strips on the veneer, that the strip that, strip number one might come, strip number 1 and 2 might come from one tree, and strip number 3 might be from an entirely different tree, right? Like it can be wildly different.
Doesn't even have to be a different tree. As you get from the outside of the tree to the inside of the tree, it gets denser. So, and you can have color variations. So but I mean, that's one of the downsides of wood, but it's also one of the positives of wood, is it is a natural product and every piece is going to be unique.
No two alike. That's true. And also, I think so Levitt's showing this great hinge video. I want to come back really quickly to this great question that Dan threw out there about the living hinges. So must a hinge be cut all the way through? So I would say, in my experience, now again, I'll certainly, I'd want to turn this over to you, Alan, to Kelly, to maybe some of the other people here at the office to get kind of an idea. But in my experience, yes. Certainly it is like an accordion fold where, the sort of curve cutting, hinge cutting that we would be doing, although it does go through, you can see there's no one line, obviously, that runs all the way through the hinge. They are kind of accordioned, right, where you have one here, one up, and they kind of offset as they climb up the hinge. I would be really interested to know if you could do it in that more carpentry style where you have the smooth surface, but I would wager that it would depend very, very heavily on the thickness of the wood that you would be cutting the hinge into, if only just because you wouldn't want to leave, too much, obviously, on the exterior to still allow it to bend. But it seems to me, just off the top of my head, that a laser would be a great tool for that, if only because it is, so well designed to allow you a lot of control over the depth of the engraving that you're doing. Is that fair to say, Alan? Like, am I off base?
No, you're right. You can do a hinge that doesn't go all the way through. you have to make sure that the side that you cut is going to be the inside part of the hinge. So if I want it to fold like that, I've got to be doing the cutting on this side.
Mhm.
What you're going to find with not cutting all the way through is that's going to be the weakest part of the hinge,
Mhm.
and you're very likely to have that hinge break. Not the whole hinge. Like I'm assuming you're still going to leave the gaps, where it's not cut at all to give it some strength. But that area where you've gone part way through, you're going to have just such a thin piece of wood, and there's going to be the grain, and it'll be basically like a piece of veneer, right? If you bend a piece of veneer, it's going to snap on the grain. It doesn't take any force at all. And
Yeah.
that's the thing that you'd have to watch for,
Definitely.
is that you don't leave it so weak that it snaps and basically eliminates the reason why you were not going all the way through, which is because you didn't want to see those breaks.
I will say, and I believe this is a video from Laser Dave, and again, huge, shout outs to Laser Dave, guy's incredible. But I will say that because the laser cut, like the curve cut hinges, are also very beautiful. I mean, it just this is a personal opinion, of course, but I love the way that they look, as you can see there in the example video. I do think they can be incorporated as a decorative element without necessarily, like, I think both techniques have value, certainly, but you're exactly right. I mean, if it's gonna break, even with a hinge like this, if this is gonna break, it's always going to be, where you cut that hinge, because you're not, just by virtue of having cut into the material, you're weakening it, right? You're giving it more points where the stress is kind of amplified on the material itself. But I have to say, when it comes to, so I believe Lev was showing earlier in one of the videos, it was these wooden sunglasses that we used to make at trade shows and things. We also do, like, we have a file that has like a curve cut hinge in its little saw. Inevitably, anytime I hand one of those to somebody at a trade show, the first thing they do is break it right in half. Like the hinge, you always hope the hinge is going to be stronger than it is, and it never is. And it's fine. I mean, like, we can make more. That's completely fine. But at the same time, they are, again, just my experience, they are pretty fragile. The hinges look beautiful, but they do tend to be, again, just by virtue of what they are and how they're built, they're really, really cool. And I think they're kind of showstopper pieces, but they are pretty fragile. I had a question for you, Kelly, really quick, that
Sure.
I believe producer Lev, thanks to Lev, by the way, good man, tossed in the chat a little earlier. I want to ask about the coating on the veneered woods. So the sort of lacquered coating, anything you can sort of tell us about, like, what makes it special, or what, what would be the purpose of putting that lacquered coating on the outside? Why not just have solid wood strips on the outside of the MDF?
Well, it just protects the wood, basically. It's just like having it.
Sorry, go ahead.
I don't think there's any other property to it other than it just protects the wood, and maybe Alan knows a little more about that than me.
It's basically a protectant. There's nothing really special about the lacquer. It's not, laser grade or anything like that. There isn't really such a thing. But the big advantage of a lacquered piece over an unfinished piece is you don't need to mask it, because a damp cloth or a sponge, just a damp sponge, will take all the resin off without affecting the material. That's why. That's one of the reasons why the solid wood and the veneer wood are finished. So you don't have to worry about doing the masking.
I mean, again, thank you to Lev for throwing this. A great answer to the question there from Mark in chat about making the hinges last longer. We also have, if you search kerf cutting Trotec on Google, you'll find a page on our website that has a bunch of different hinge patterns that you can download to try out to find the one maybe that suits your particular wood well. But just to come back to what you were just saying there, Alan. So we recently, well, I say recently, I think it's almost a year and a half, 2 years now, but time is strange since COVID. The veneer had a one type of coating, and then I believe was changed to like an oil coating, if I'm not mistaken. But I never found that it really changed the performance of the wood at all. And in my experience, it's just kind of a different base for the coating, was it, or a sort of a different product?
Yeah, no, it was an issue. There were a couple of people who had trouble with the lacquer for particular applications. And they came up with this idea of, well, let's not do lacquer, let's do an oil rub. And then they did the oil rub, then found out that everybody hated it. So yeah, it didn't really look that much different, but it felt different, and it didn't clean the same, and it just wasn't as nice to work with. So they went back to the lacquer, which, strangely enough, what's been working for 100 years, still seems to work okay. So that's the
why
way
we still
it
have Mike
goes.
Clark as our sales guy.
Yeah.
So
the other thing I would just say on the and this is a very Canadian solution to the problem, is if you can get away with it, if the inside of the hinge is not critical that it has to be beautiful, hockey tape.
Yep.
Like a fiber tape will strengthen that hinge without changing how it folds. So that's just a little cheat that you can use if you can get away with having that on the inside.
I mean,
the white or black, the fiber hockey tape, not the clear sock tape.
Yep. And that's a very Canadian distinction, but you're exactly right.
Yeah.
The thing that Kelly mentioned too earlier about people using the MDF as a backer is the first thing that pops to mind for me there. If you are using that sort of, as you say, the living hinge on the inside in order to allow the piece to fold, and maybe the exterior is wood, but on the interior you then are going to put another material on top of that wood there to make it whatever it is, making a book or a
liner or something. Yeah,
absolutely, the inside of a box with some felt or something, who knows, but you can easily camouflage that interior piece, and then that's a really great tip, actually.
Yeah,
I'm gonna have to make a note, like, not sock tape. Make a little note for
video coming.
Yeah.
Yes.
And
imminent.
The other trick is, if you're using, it doesn't make a difference for plywood because the grain's going to go in all different directions. But if you're using a solid wood, if you can get away with it, because normally people want the grain to go left and right. But if you can get away with it, have it so that the hinges go perpendicular to the grain. Because it's less likely to split. It'll split between the grain lines, along the grain lines, much sooner, much easier than it will split against the grain. Because the grain is what gives the wood its strength, right? It's kind of like rebar in concrete.
Mm-hmm. When you're looking at a piece of veneer, out of curiosity, is the grain, or do we endeavor always to have the grain running in the same direction across those top strips? You would never have something where they're...
Grain in engraving in general, the grain always goes the longest dimension.
Longest dimension is a better way to put it. Yeah, you're right. So I wanted to ask, I know it's coming up really quick here, but Lev threw something in the chat earlier, and I think it's worth pointing out that we do have cork sheets, because it's one of those newer products that we didn't necessarily have for a while, but the cork, I think, kind of gets missed a little bit as such a versatile material. I mean, we've used it for a lot of different really cool applications, at the office, but it's not one that I immediately think of usually when I kind of look at our wood materials. It's kind of it's a bit of the ugly duckling, I think, sometimes, but it really is it gives a beautiful finish. And it is, all of the stuff we've been talking about in terms of grain and warpage and all that sort of stuff, you could more or less throw that out the window when it comes to cork, if I'm not mistaken.
Pretty much.
You don't really have to worry about any of that stuff. It basically feels like, I don't know, Kelly, how would you describe it? It's like, I don't know, like a sheet of cork. Like
fabric almost.
That's what I was going to say. It's a lot like fabric.
It's very pliable. It's super easy to work with. It engraves really dark and really nice every time. Mm-hmm. Cuts really well no matter what thickness you're working with because it's so soft. And it also makes a really nice backer for wood.
True.
Yeah.
For just about anything, honestly, because it has that natural
Yeah.
kind of, I don't know what this was meant to imply. This is a talking hand, but that kind of cushion, right? That kind of, it has a bit of give, a bit
Yeah.
of flex in it, kind of naturally.
Yeah.
Um,
And it's even a little bit grippy. So if you're making like coasters or anything like that, it actually like holds it in one place on the table. So it's just, yeah, it's a really nice backer.
I remember, much to our chagrin, Miguel actually once used a sheet of cork to make himself a mouse pad, which I mean wouldn't be a problem, but then it had 3M on it, so we actually glued it to one of these tables like you're seeing here on the. But as a mouse pad, it did work. I mean, it was really grippy in that case, but it did work beautifully, right? Because it is just again, as a natural product, like it has a lot of the benefits that you have with wood. As you said, it takes paint really well. It engraves really beautifully. It's really nice to work with, but it does kind of have its own special sort of bonuses, I would say, that you don't often. There's maybe less to worry about than you have when you're working with a veneer or a solid wood or whatever.
I mean, it is soft and it's easy to break too. So
true, absolutely, like my heart. If I'm not mistaken, this comes in a lot of different. So I love showing some cool applications, so I don't want to get them to switch back to the presentation. But in terms of like the thicknesses and the sheet sizes that we have for cork, it's quite a range, if I'm not mistaken, as compared to the other wood products.
Well, the sheet size is all the same. I don't even know what it exactly is, but it's I think it's 32 by, where is that? I'm gonna have it.
It's quite a large sheet, if I'm not mistaken, right? As compared to,
it's a large sheet, but it's 36 by 24.
Gotcha.
Yeah, and we can cut it down to ship it. Yeah, and then the thicknesses, there's like 3 or 4 thicknesses. It starts at 0.5 millimeter and goes all the way up to 6 millimeters. So
that 6 millimeter stuff is really cool too. I encourage you guys, if you're looking for a new material or something different to try out, give cork a shot. Like I think these videos that Lev is showing hopefully kind of give you some inspiration, but it is a much more versatile material than you might initially think. Even UV printing right on cork looks really nice. Does it shrink when you cut it? That is a good question, Joey. I would have to ask.
No.
It doesn't, does it? No. So far as I know too, it's all naturally sourced in Canada, I believe. At least our supplier here in Canada, I believe, is another Canadian company. So it's, in our case, you'd be buying Canadian and kind of staying within a sustainable Canadian producer, if that has any particular value to you, kind of thing. Or not.
Both made in Portugal. From a Canadian company, though. We do buy it from, but
that Canadian company buys it from Portugal. The supplier's Canadian. There you go. See, this is why I'm just here for color, really, if we're honest.
We don't actually. I'll just point this out. We don't actually sell the cork in the U.S. right now, but if you need it, you can always send me an email, and I'll let you know where to find it.
Absolutely. You can have our cork, Alan, I guess.
Also, if you have a Trotec laser, then you would have gotten a sheet of the cork in your starter kit.
In Canada.
In Canada, yes. And we sell the starter kit. So if you don't have a Trotec laser and you want to try a whole bunch of the materials, we do have a starter kit that covers all of the categories. So if you were looking to try a bunch of stuff, we have those available.
That's very true. So I don't know if we got to, are we able to kind of double back a little bit to the solid wood sheets? Because I'm not sure we really got to talk about them. We talked about the veneer, but maybe would it be worth stopping really quickly on the solid wood sheets just to give them a quick look over? I don't know that we really got to talk about them, but they're...
Yeah, we talked about them first. There's not that much more to say about those. They're a little bit thicker, so they're the only one where they're available in 2 thicknesses. The veneers are really 3 millimeter and that's it, or 1/8. The solid woods, you do have the thicker option, which is nice. And they don't have the MDF core; they're just solid all the way through. So
all the way through, yeah.
There is a little bit more warping and.
some of that stuff to be conscious of. But again, if you use
Yeah.
your entire pack of 20 right away, you won't see any warping at all. It'll just it'll come nice and shrink wrap from.
I think
from
the 20
warehouse and you're good
packs
to
are
go.
cut to a smaller size, and then the 12 by 24 sheets are singles.
Yes, that's
Yeah.
that's my understanding too. And then they also come in two different finishes, I think, right? Just really quickly, I think off the top of my head, I want to say they have like a matte finish, or they have like a, or does it depend on the
No.
particular type of?
No,
No?
it's an unfinished. It's an unfinished, so there's no lacquer on it or anything. It's just the plain solid wood.
Just wood.
No.
Gotcha.
Solid wood is lacquered.
Straight out of the tree.
Oh, it's lacquered? Oh, okay.
There you go.
Yeah, if it was unlacquered, it would warp even worse because it would just absorb the moisture out of the air.
Oh, right, yeah.
Right. So
Makes
it's that the lacquer seals it and makes it warp less. But I mean, you still get the seepage into the grain from the ends and things like that. So.
Yep. It's like Doug said earlier, right? Like you've always just got to remember it's still a natural product. Despite how great it is, it's got its and that gives it its beauty and some of its foibles, some of its fun quirks. The Eco, speaking of a natural product, I mean, do you want to tell us a little bit about the Eco, Kelly? I think it's kind of a really cool, unique.
It
thing.
is. So our head office came up with this for us. And it's an eco-friendly product. A lot of model making with this. It kind of reminds me of the back of a dresser drawer. There's always a backer sheet. It's kind of like a pegboard almost.
Particle board, kind of. Yeah.
And that's what it is. It's like it's a really hard cardboard. So we have a lot of schools using it because they do a lot of model making. I'm surprised it didn't take off more than that, but maybe we're just behind Europe a little bit. But yeah, it's a great product, and I think if you search for it on our YouTube channel, there's a great video of a layered piece, a dinosaur or a rhinoceros or something.
Yep. Absolutely. Yeah. I know the one you mean.
Yeah. But it really shows really well what that product can do. So check that one out, or I don't know if Lev can find that video easily enough. But
you're exactly right, though, Kelly. I mean, like when you describe it as hard cardboard, I think that's still my favorite way of it. It really does feel very much like, and it has that natural kind of texture on the surface as well.
Yeah, like the rough cardboard finish to it.
100%.
Yeah.
But if I'm not mistaken, this is actually made from recycled materials, right? I mean, is this?
Yeah, it is. Yeah,
it's recycled wood and their
recycled cardboard.
Recycled
It's
cardboard.
a cellulose.
Oh,
Yeah, it's a cellulose product, so it's made from recycled cardboard.
I mean, you've seen it in some of the videos here, but it also has some of the benefits that we were describing with cork too, where in terms of like taking paint or taking UV printing, things like that. It's a natural fit. I think, Kelly, you mentioned schools. I think like in terms of model making and stuff, if you have any sort of very particular, restrictions, or if your company is trying to stick to, a certain amount of eco or eco-friendly materials, like a certain percentage of that, I think this is a perfect fit, right? There's the elephant. I don't know if that's
okay. It's not a rhinoceros or a dinosaur.
We have those too, but they're just another. They're another.
Yeah,
the dinosaur's made of cardboard, I think, and what a strange job we have. What a great, wonderful place to work. Our dinosaurs made of cardboard. But yeah, you mentioned model making, and I was hoping Lev might pull up this particular video. This was an area I didn't realize how many people use lasers for model making, but lasers and by extension, I think also this material are kind of a perfect fit, right? I mean, it has the rigidity that you would expect from like a cardboard, like you're saying, but at the same time, it has kind of a unique, I don't know, you sort of have to see it in person. It has a bit of a unique texture and feel and kind of look to it that, you don't often get with some of the other products.
And it takes paint better than acrylic, which is
True.
the other material that they use a lot for model making.
Mm-hmm.
Very true. That heart-shaped puzzle that Lev was showing earlier, I think is great evidence of that. In terms of, I mean, printing on it, it looks, it's a natural, basically. I think you get to see it here in this video, but yeah, no, it's awesome. And also, I believe, I'm not sure if this comes in the starter pack, but in Canada, but I would say again, another one to maybe keep on your list if you're looking, if we, you know, the next time you see a sale on woods at Trotec, maybe a good one to kind of check out and test out.
There used to be a piece in the starter kit.
I think the starter kit does tend to, well, I don't want to talk too much Canadiana, but aside from the sock tape, but I think the starter kit does kind of vary from even some of the different materials. You might get different colors or different, you know, things slightly different from what we originally intend sometimes, but it's just to do with, you know, making sure that, you know, you get a version of everything we have, as opposed to worrying about, you know, we can't send you a starter kit because we don't have yellow black acrylic, let's say, for example.
Yeah.
A great question from Joey in terms of if you were going to do a box, like a container for an engraved wine glass. Maybe I'll throw that over to Alan. Like, what wood product might you recommend that would have, you know, possibly the rigidity to make a good box, but then also, you know, the flexibility?
Really, any of them. It depends on how you're going to finish it. Basically, if you're going to paint it, then the MDF or the plywood will work just fine. If you want natural wood finish, then the veneer or the solid wood. That's really the only limitation.
True. This is a great example. I think Lev's got one here. I think this one is veneer, it mentions at the beginning,
Yeah.
but yeah, I would agree with that 100%. That really, it's just, you know, as long as you know, you can find a color of wood or like a particular type of wood that you love, you know, outside of, like you said, the caveats that you mentioned, I think you're pretty much good to go. Any of the veneers, any of the solid woods, you know, maybe use the cork for the label or for the wine tasting menu or something like that. But yeah, any of the, I mean, even the Eco would make a lovely box, I think. Yeah, absolutely. Do Trotec sell UV printers? So that is a very good question, Joey. We used to have a Mamaki in our Ontario office, but we partnered with Mamaki in Canada and the USA. Yeah, Lev's got it exactly there. We'd be very happy to put you in contact with them. If you see a Mamaki printer or a UV printer in one of our videos, chances are, I mean, it's going to come from, you know, one of two brands, but we don't have a particular, you know, brand in-house that we use necessarily. We do have a long-standing partnership with Mamaki, and I can speak to, you know, from personal experience how great their products work. But yeah, I mean, Mamaki, Mutos, there are a lot of great UV printers out in the marketplace. Definitely worth taking a look at, kind of checking out. So yeah, quick question here from that's a great question. Lev actually tossed in the side chat there. So curious if Alan, you might be able to speak a little bit about UV and the laser. So in terms of like, you know, if you're looking at, I'm not sure exactly, you know, what he wants to get at there, but I will say, when it comes to UV printing, you know, not necessarily just with woods, but also just in general with our materials, is it an application that you see a lot of, and is it something that, you know, you recommend to people looking? Are there certain materials maybe that don't work super well with the, you know, with the UV printers, that kind of thing?
Yeah, it depending on your market. You know, if you're doing badges, everybody wants color on their badges.
True.
So that's a perfect application. Any sort of POP, any sort of promotional items, people always want their brand in color, and they want, you know, the photograph and the YouTube and the Twitter logos and all of that stuff on everything now, right? So with laser, you're for the most part limited to 2 colors. So by adding the print, you get away from that. You basically break that wall down to where you can have unlimited colors. Sublimation is very popular in the trophy industry as a way of doing color, but the limit on sublimation is typically because of the heat that's used to sublimate. It limits the materials. You need a polyester coating, so you can't use just raw wood. You can't really use any acrylic-based materials because acrylic starts to soften at 180 degrees, and sublimation typically requires 400, so that's a bad combination. And so by going with a UV printer, you get away from the limitations on the material. UV printers are kind of like lasers. If you know how to tweak the settings, and you know how the clear undercoat or the clear overcoat affects different things, you can almost print on anything. So we have some materials that are specific to it. The digital print series material has a coating specifically for UV printing, but there's ways to print on any of our materials, really. The thing you have to watch when you're printing on the woods is that you're going to get more color density on a finished material, because basically the ink sits on top of the lacquer. Okay, if you use an unfinished wood like the MDF or the plywood, the ink is going to soak into the wood, and you can have, usually you're not using so much ink that it bleeds, but it can into the grain. But more commonly, you'll find that the image is kind of washed out because it's actually penetrating into the wood and not staying all on the surface. So
Right.
that's what you have to, when you're choosing a material to inkjet print on. That's one of the things you want to keep in mind, is that the more ink you can build up on the surface of the material, the richer the color is going to be, and that's why we have the DPS material. The other thing as far as applications is typically with printers, especially the older sublimation printers that I have a lot of experience with, are very finicky, and they don't like to do short runs. Like you know, if you have a customer, you're doing badges for the local Olive Garden, and they're going to call you up once a week and say, yeah, I need these 2 badges. If you're going to print those 2 badges and, complete, that's going to take a lot of setup. You're going to waste a lot of ink doing head cleanings. It's just going to be very expensive. So what you can do with the DPS materials and some of the other materials as well is you can print a sheet at a time, cut it out on your laser, and then as they come back with, okay, I need one that says Bob and one that says Kelly, you just engrave Bob and Kelly on 2 badges, and you're done in a minute, right?
Kelly,
So
I didn't know you went to the Olive Garden.
Yeah, that's the
Yes.
other. That's the other advantage to the UV printers, is you can do all. If you send it out to screen print, then you've got to do a huge volume to make it
True.
cost effective. So it's a nice little way to add that extra bit, and the prices have come down. You can get a decent 12 by 24 UV printer for around 15 grand, I think, is where they're at now, which is a third of what they were 5 years ago.
That's pretty similar to what I was hearing at the most recent trade show I did.
Yeah.
That was kind of right in the ballpark for as you say, and the quality of those smaller, I mean, it's the same as lasers, right? Just because it's a smaller printer by no means that it's an inferior printer. It's the level of quality is
Well, it's like anything else. The big boys, IBM figures out how to make a PC, and now everybody can do it, right?
Yeah.
Or Trotec and Epilogue and Universal, create the market for lasers, and then anybody can slap the components together and say, hey, here's my laser, right? You can get kits on the internet to do it yourself, but I wouldn't.
Don't
can.
do that. Yeah, but you can.
Yeah.
We wouldn't recommend it.
It's the same. It's the same with. I mean, the 3D modelers are the same Same
100%.
sort of thing. It used to be $100,000 and you'd buy one if you were Ford. Now they sell them at Princess Auto for $1,000, right?
Yeah. Well, and yeah, exactly to your point, even on Amazon, right? I mean, you can get 3D printers for, cheap now, comparatively.
Yeah.
I will say that, so Lev showed in a video there previously, also our Vision, the positioning camera. When you're working with UV printing in particular, I mean, if you have the registration marks that you can, I think he's going to fly back to that. Thank you, bud. The ability for the camera to be able to basically clockwork the registration marks on your sheet and be able to do a perfect cut every time, regardless of whether you have it, back in the laser in the exact same position, or you have the job positioned exactly the same way. Gives you a lot of flexibility and just a lot of peace of mind when you're working with something that can be, really complicated. Like, I mean, you can see in this file here, basically in a nutshell, it's very slightly more complicated than this, but essentially you can see the camera is able to register, or pardon me, to kind of pick up where the registration marks are, which lets it know where then all the little monsters are. And then based on that information, it's able to cut perfectly every single time, even if you don't, put your material back in this exact same spot if you don't have a jig. Or is that a fair analysis or a fair kind of summation?
It's even more important than that, because the printer companies spend a lot of money and a lot of effort on the color, right? Making it so you can get an exact color that you want. They are notoriously bad for being the right size, right? So if you cut a 24x12 box on your laser, it's going to be 24x12 plus or minus 1/1000th of an inch. It should be, if everything is set up right. If you print that same thing on a printer, it may be 24 1/3 by 11.8, because of the way their motion systems are different and the way the ink floods a little bit. And so that's the biggest advantage of those of the print and cut systems with like our laser or other mechanical there's CNC machines that have the same thing, is that not only does it adjust for position and rotation, it'll also adjust for if there's any skew to it or if the actual size is wrong. And that's the big advantage to those systems, is that it corrects all of those issues that you have with the printers.
Very cool. Yeah, I have to say, in a previous life, with advertising agencies and working with designers and stuff, just file setup and setting up proper registration marks, ensuring that your file comes at exactly the correct dimensions every time is much trickier than you would imagine it would be, particularly when you're moving from one software to another. And then also, even just, you're just printing something on a desktop printer. You can click one button and it can scale a giant file down to an 8.5 by 11 size, but it's not at all concerned with maintaining the perfect dimensions. It's not, quality, all that stuff. It'll just, I can shrink that down for you, no problem. So, that's a very, very good point. I really like the hack that you mentioned earlier too about, when you were talking about the Olive Garden badges as an example, to sort of do an entire sheet of them and then leave let's say the blanks and stuff. That's a really good point. Thank you, Lev. Awesome. You're one step ahead of me. I guess we're getting to the top of the hour here, so I will really quickly. You can see it there in the banner at the bottom of the screen. It's been scrolling kind of throughout the stream here. But just a reminder that if you guys have seen any of the materials that Kelly's been kind of showing off for us and has been so kind to kind of take us through, and you're interested in trying them out, you can check out our Canadian site at engraving-supplies.ca or the American site, engraving-supplies.com. If you have any questions, you can always reach out to Kelly, Alan, or myself, obviously, or our very friendly customer service teams that will be very happy to try and help you out. It's our hope, though, that these streams are kind of giving you guys some insights and stuff. Obviously, they'll stay up on our YouTube channels, for time immemorial now. So if you ever want to go back and check them out in the future, even if you have a question someday in the future on YouTube, you want to toss it in the comments, we'll do our best to get back to you and answer that for you. Question from Joey about whether we give group courses or private courses on subjects. It depends on where you are. If you're in Canada, I know certainly we do trainings where you can do, a group training, you can do an individual training, a private training. We host open houses in most of our showrooms across Canada. We have some coming up in the next few months here, and those always have like a training component. So certainly something to keep an eye out for. Actually, if you go to engraving-supplies.ca, we have the training available right there on the web store if you want to reach out to us and see about getting some private training done. I assume, do you guys offer training, like paid training, also in the US, Alan? I know.
Yeah, we do that in the US as well. It's just reach out to us if you're in the US and you wanted to do that, and we'll put you in touch with tech support and they can make arrangements for that.
Awesome. Question from Kayla: do you have to be in Canada to order from the Canadian site? So yeah, technically yes. If you have a Canadian address, so if you're working with a business that has a location in Canada and a location in the US, it's not a problem for us to bill. I mean, Kelly, maybe you should. Please correct me if I'm wrong here, but we can bill an invoice and address in Canada, but we can only then ship obviously to that address in Canada. So if you want to then take it from there, fine. But
we really only ship and bill in Canada.
In Canada, unfortunately.
Yeah.
Well, I will point out that the reason for 95% of the products that Canada has that we don't have in the US, the reason for that is because they're already available in the US.
Mm-hmm.
And so, Trotec Canada can buy 1,000 pieces of it and spread the shipping and the freight and brokerage and all of those extra costs of getting it across the border over 1,000 pieces and then resell it. If you were doing the same thing, bringing it back, it would be, your $10 piece of material would cost you $60. Typically, those products are also available directly from the manufacturer that Trotec Canada buys them from. So if there's something you see on the Canadian website that's not on the US website, just send us a message and we will tell you exactly where to get it from in the US already at 60% of the cost.
100%. Question there quickly from Joey about granite tiles. Kelly, I don't know if that's something that we can.
We have had it before.
It's very funny that you mentioned granite tiles.
We probably would be open to selling what we have left, but we're not going to be getting any more.
If you're interested,
There's 3 problems with granite tiles. One is granite is actually a terrible material to laser.
Yes.
Because it's got all of the different crystals in it, and they're all different, and they all engrave different. The second reason is tiles do not ship. For every one that arrives in one piece, you're going to have at least one that's broken. And the third thing is they are heavy. So it costs more to ship them than the tiles are worth.
Yeah.
First of all, I would suggest not using granite. You can get lots of materials, corian, avenite, things like that look as good as granite, but actually can be laser engraved and cut. The other thing that I would suggest is if you do want granite, go to a local cabinet maker or countertop maker, and they throw away more granite every day than you could ever possibly use. And you just make a deal with them, say, hey, you've got all these pieces that are in your garbage bin. Would you cut it to these sizes for me? What would you charge? And just make a deal like that, and then you're going to get a higher quality granite than you would get with the tiles, and it's going to be a lot cheaper, and you don't have to pay the shipping and the breakage and all of that stuff.
100%. I will say, I do think I can see the appeal of granite, certainly in terms of like a really nicely executed engraving on a piece of granite is beautiful. But I have to echo what Alan says. It's one of the toughest materials I've ever tried to engrave, like just in terms of actual difficulty of engraving. The material's fighting you kind of the whole way. But I will say, no, sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say, I would also bet that any piece of granite you've seen that you think is engraved was actually sandblasted.
There's that possibility too.
If it's done well, it's sandblasted, guarantee it.
But in terms of like the engraving on stones that we've done, I mean, aside from like the agates and like the precious, precious stones kind of thing, oftentimes, is it fair to say, Kelly, like we've also just gone to like the Home Depot or Home Hardware down the road to get some sample tiles from them. I think Alan's suggesting for anything, any sort of scale, certainly, working with a supplier that, because of, again, granite is so fragile, they'll probably have a ton of breakage that otherwise would just go to waste. So, working with someone like that. But if you're just looking for a sample that you can test or something as a prototype, like a granite tile from your local hardware store will do just about the same as granite from us. But
well, slate will work better than granite.
Slate's nice too, actually.
Yeah.
Marble.
There's a few. Marble works better than granite typically.
Mm-hmm.
Granite is kind of the worst of them for a bunch of different reasons. Yeah.
But it is beautiful. I mean, I can understand the appeal. No question. Yeah. Sandblasting is what laser cut templates are for. That's exactly right. That's very, very true.
7th PET.
Yep. I think that will just about wrap it up probably for today. I mean, again, a huge thank you to both Alan and to Kelly for once again giving us an hour of their time. And I think, sharing all their knowledge with us. I don't know what our plan is for the next one of these streams, because if I'm not mistaken, do we have other material categories left that aren't the accessories?
Nope.
The next one might be digital printing.
It might be digital printing.
Yeah. We're working on there's a I can't think of the name now. There's a show coming up in October. That's a print show. Print United, that's what it is.
Yes.
And in conjunction with that, we are thinking about doing some promotions around the digital print series materials. So
I think that would be really cool.
We might have if we can swing it, we might have a guest presenter who knows the printers literally inside and out.
Nice.
And can talk on that side of it, and then we can help out with the material side and the laser side. So
I think, and this is something I haven't necessarily talked a lot about with my colleagues, but I will say, once we've made our way through the catalog in its entirety, I'd really like to keep doing these streams. But I think, I kind of want to turn it over to you guys. And also, I think things like talking about the digital print, I think is a great example. I think it's worth going through these materials maybe once every, year and a half. I mean, obviously you want to talk about anything new that comes out, but I'm curious, what you guys would like to see from a materials stream in terms of, what would be helpful, what would be something that you think would be, what's an area you'd like us to focus a special episode on, like Alan was saying with the digital print. That's absolutely something we can do. And you make a really good point too, Alan, in that we have such great and talented customers and contacts in the industry to talk about, all the different sort of ancillary products like the UV printers, so many things that we've talked, sandblasting even for that regard, that kind of goes hand in hand with a lot of our materials. Obviously we love, people using materials on their lasers, but our materials are flexible and they do work obviously with other sort of systems as well. So there's no reason to cut those out of the equation. We're all in it together kind of thing.
Yep. Let us know what you want to know.
Just to answer Joey's quick question there too about any, I believe you mean shows with Trotec in Montreal. So in terms of, we have an open house that we're currently planning in Montreal that will probably be coming in September area. But we have the Imprint trade show, which is also coincidentally a print and cut trade show in the first full week of September in Montreal. So we will be there. Myself and Didier, our salesperson, and I think possibly some of our other staff will be there to support you and check it out if you're going to be at that particular show. But yeah, absolutely, we'll be announcing an open house at our Montreal office before too long. Actually, I think it's going to be in the next a couple of weeks, I think. So definitely something to keep your eyes peeled for on the on your emails. Any final thoughts? Anything I can? I mean, Kelly, again, really appreciate you taking us through everything. Do you have a favorite wood product? Do you have anything in particular that a favorite application? Is it the rhinoceros? Is that like the favorite? Is there?
No, it's not my favorite. Actually, my favorite laser engraved thing that I ever saw was probably the granite tile National Geographic lady.
That one is really good.
Yeah, it's really impressive. Do we still have those in our showrooms? I don't even think so.
The Malala,
but we
the
should.
Yusufzai, I think we definitely still have one in Montreal. I know she's right by our front door.
Yeah.
But yeah, any of the like granite tile like mosaic ones that are a giant portrait over like 8 tiles, is that the sort of thing that you're talking about?
Yeah.
Those are really cool.
Yeah, it's really cool. Other than that, there's just so many different things we could do. So we could cover different market segments, and just keep them going. I don't think we'll ever run out of topics. I've done a lot of presentations, and they're very different every time.
I will say, definitely reach out to us, guys. If there's anything you would like to see going forward, shoot us an email. Certainly, you can reach myself, YouTube at troteclaser.com, I believe, or .ca. Try them both. See what happens. But either way, you're going to get somebody nice. And then, yes, Toronto does have one up Stomp and Tom. But regardless, it's definitely something we'd love to hear from you guys in terms of what you'd like to see. Alan, any sort of final thoughts? Anything you'd like to toss in there at the end?
Nope, you pretty much got it covered.
I'm glad. Well, again, a huge thank you to all of you guys for watching. A huge thank you to my co-hosts Kelly and Alan for joining me. We will see you again in 1 month from now. And we hope to see you maybe even sooner at one of our Trotec locations. Talk to you by phone, anything like that. Again, you can always reach out to us. But in the meantime, take care, everybody.